All right. There we are. Here we are. Welcome.
Yay!
Another episode. Yes, welcome once again to A&M Talk D&D. I am Ash King.
I'm Michael Cross.
And we're here to talk to you about all things D&D, but also specifically Van Richten's Guide to Ravenloft, because we are nearly done with with this book. It feels like we started a forever ago
No.
talking about Domains of Dread and Ravenloft, and now here we are. But
I know. But the good thing is, I know what I hope is that some of our listeners who have kind of stuck with us this entire time start giving us some subjects that they would love to hear about. Because there's the great thing is we're not talking about fifth edition in 2014. We're talking about fifth edition in 2021, which has grown so much in 7 years. And it has just been phenomenal to
has it been that
watch.
long already?
Yeah, and I've heard people say that it's time for a sixth edition. I have to remind people that the basic Dungeons and Dragons actually lasted for 31 years. It was in the basic edition was from 19 I think 78 to 1999 when WotC finally bought TSR. So it I believe fifth edition could last that long.
I mean, like for me, it depends on because I know there's always a lot of talk about sixth edition, sixth edition, and my question kind of always is like, okay, so like when you're going from one edition to another, like there has to be some sort of mechanical change,
Right.
right? Because like going from 3 to 3.5, that was a mechanical change.
Mm-hmm.
They changed a lot about the mechanics of the game to make it better, faster, more customizable at that point. And then of course when 3.5 leapt to 4, they were kind of streamlining it a little bit, and then also introducing there was a lot in that edition. I sometimes jokingly call fourth edition the MMO as a
Mm-hmm.
tabletop edition because they were trying so much with like daily powers, and because like you had encounter powers that you could use, like each one you could use like once per encounter, blah blah blah. There were daily powers that you could use like once per day, blah blah blah. But like there wasn't good explanation about like, okay, what does that mean?
Yeah.
Like what does this mean?
All of a sudden I
And
have this power, but I don't know why or how or yeah.
right, and you had to like, and you swapped things out because you only got like so many. You only got like so many of those powers, and you had to like swap it out like every so often once you got to certain levels, blah blah blah. So yeah, so I don't foresee there being a sixth edition anytime soon, just
No.
because I think they finally hit that sweet spot. And yes, Ginger Halfling. So in the chat, Ginger Halfling says 5e has been amazing for new players. It's been so easy to pick up quickly as someone with no previous TTRPG experience. And yes, that is the beauty of 5e, is that they
Mhm.
really, there are some people out there who think that 5e is too simplistic because they feel like, oh, a lot of these complicated mechanics from the other editions got tossed out, baby with the bathwater kind of situation. And sometimes I just tell those people, okay, well, you might want to look at Pathfinder because
And
Pathfinder,
there are plenty
yeah.
of gaming systems out there. That's why I love what WotC has done is it's made it simpler for people who want to come and play D&D. There are several systems out there, much harder ones if you want the really complicated ones.
If you want
But
to
I
get
think if
crunchy,
yeah,
we can recommend you some real crunchy systems, but 5e is just streamlined, simplified,
and adaptable
and
to
adaptable.
to to not just fantasy, and we're proving that with Red Dirt D&D that you can set it in any time period, any kind of fantasy that you want. You can put it in the future, and a lot of writers have done that. With there's a Wizards of the Coast 5e, there's a Wizards of Oz 5e that just came out on Kickstarter. There's Lord of the Rings. There's some sci-fi. There's and it's all 5e. So I think from what I understand, there's going to be a Transformers GI Joe crossover 5e that's supposed to be coming out.
Dang.
Um,
Well, I mean,
so
that's the good thing about, technically like Wizards of the Coast is a subsidiary of Hasbro, so
yeah,
they're in theory any license that Hasbro has, they can actually make a fully licensed product, a fully licensed campaign world based around
yeah,
some of their more lucrative products. Um I think, of course, my favorite setting that I've seen is, the Equestria.
Yeah.
So the My Little Pony D&D, which there's official minis for.
Uh-huh. Yeah,
It's
you can
like,
find them over at Edmund Unplugged. They've got the actual minis for the My
mm-hmm,
Little Pony. Yes.
so yeah, it's one of those things. Yeah, so I don't, unless something really changes, like, and they feel a need to really change something. Honestly, I think we're probably gonna see 5e for at least
Yeah.
another 5 years. I
Yeah, it's also too popular right now.
Oh yeah,
You don't
no,
change
you don't.
horses midstream, and
You don't
right
break
now
it in the
there's
middle of the surge.
no, we're growing. We're about to add, I think, a whole bunch more with. I think we're going to start looking at more planes now that we've touched into Ravenloft and in the Feywild coming up in September. So there's a whole lot of stuff that's going to be changing. But talking about new books that are coming up, I don't think I've ever been more excited for a book. And even I know you were really excited about Ravenloft, but I think I'm more excited about Fizban's Treasury of Dragons, which was listed. There was mentioned on, I guess, during D&D Live or shortly before it.
Yeah,
This is,
it was the one that they got to announce on the stream, since
yeah,
it feels like everything else got like spoiled by
well,
Amazon.
yes, Amazon. Uh,
Bezos.
yes, the idea of an entire tome of dragons. I think just about every edition has had them before, and finally to get it in fifth edition.
I think it's like, what, the Dracopedia is like one of them from like
Yeah, the
third or
Draconomicon or
fourth.
something like that. Yeah.
I mean,
um
I've pulled stuff from those previously.
yeah,
Um,
and I would hopefully, I mean, this kind of stuff could really be neat to see, and
yes,
maybe Red Dirt D&D. uh
gem dragons.
I know the gem dragons are
Gem
phenomenal.
dragons.
What got the two things that got me in this book, the idea of this book, one was the idea of, how did they put it? It's about their hordes. And I'm going to try and see if I can how hordes focus the magic that suffuses dragons and connects them to the myriad worlds of the material plane. And I'm like, we all know dragons collect hordes, but we always thought it's just because they're greedy. And
What they do.
yeah, I want to see an episode of Hoarders where they go to see Smog and say, you got to get rid of some of this stuff, man. But the idea that it's actually collecting the hordes and they're jealous of people stealing from their hordes because it's them. It is part of their magic. It connects them to the worlds. It's like, yes, you're right. Mind blown. I'm looking so forward to that. Second is revealing the story of the first world and the role Bahamut and Tiamat played in its creation and destruction. Now, have you heard about this first world?
No, this is new to me.
Okay, let's see how quickly I can actually pull
Give
this up.
give me, let's say,
Because
your 30-second elevator pitch. Go.
yes, well, it actually has been mentioned before in 5e. It is mentioned in Tasha's Cauldron of Everything. It is mentioned in a sidebar of Tasha's in one of her spells, the Dream of the Blue Veil, I think is what it's called. And it is, like I said, it's just a little sidebar, and I'll see if I can find it. It talks about traveling to other worlds, and of course, it mentions the various worlds. Um, it talks about uh, um, it was there's so many worlds. It was not always so. Various scholars speak of a primordial state, a single reality they call the first world, which preceded the multiverse as we know it. Many of the peoples and monsters that inhabit the worlds in the material plane originated there. After the first world was shattered by a great cataclysm, giving birth to the worlds that came in its wake, the progeny of the first elves, dwarves, beholders, and other iconic creatures took root on world after world like seeds scattered by a cosmic wind. If the musings of these great sages are true, every world is a reflection and in some cases a distortion of the first world. That's the only mention I've ever seen, and it's just And apparently, I'm thinking a battle between Bahamut and Tiamat just destroyed it and caused almost a big bang that ended up seeding all the rest of the worlds, the material planes. And it's just, uh, I'm really looking forward to this book. What are you looking forward to in this book?
um, you know, I mean, I love source material. Like, you know, it's candy for me. It really
Yeah.
it's candy. As a writer, as a creator, like that's the thing I like out of these types of books is like that source material and is that inspirational material. Because I mean, as we've talked about, you know, I built Ratoya, you know, basically from scratch.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
But you know, it was built from scratch, but it was inspired by, you know, either looking at the original lore and being like, oh yeah, this is something I want to include, or no, this is something I'm a fix and I'm a change. So that's kind of what I'm looking forward to is just kind of that brain floss, that brain candy.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you know, get in there in all my little sulci.
Yeah.
Uh, you know, using anatomy terms because you know that's what I'm studying right now in school.
Yeah.
So trying to get all that in my brain, but yeah, just and I just get excited about dragons in general. I
Mm-hmm.
mean,
Oh yeah. It's in the name. It's Dungeons and Dragons.
have have my little
Yeah.
my 3D printed friend here.
Got my
Uh,
dragons up there.
so I don't have a problem. You have a problem.
Nice.
You have a problem with my problem,
The problem I have is I don't have enough dragons.
right? Need more
Right?
dragons.
That's a problem. I got
Yes, always
99 problems and not having enough dragons isn't one of them.
is
Uh,
no, it is one of them.
that is one of them. Yes, actually, yes.
Yes, exactly. Ablaze Aiden. The got to get those DM gears turning because
Yes. And they've
if
proven
there's
with
one
Raven.
thing that I want you to take away from this is that always be looking for inspiration because
Mm-hmm.
you never know where it's gonna come from. So always be looking for your next inspiration fix.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think it's going to be, although I think it's going to be a good mix of DM and player material
Yeah,
with the new Dragonborn, with some probably some new feats.
because I mean
Um,
that stuff they've been testing for at least a
mhm.
year now. Because I
Yeah.
think I remember, because I know our friends over at um, Feats and Fables,
Hmm.
their ranger, he plays, I believe it's one of the dragon classes that Unearthed Arcana put out like a year ago.
Yeah.
So that's always exciting to finally see the Unearthed Arcanas released out into the wild.
Yeah. Speaking of Unearthed Arcana, which apparently they worked for this book,
Mm-hmm.
ones that they did not work for
Mm-hmm.
was the Strixhaven.
Strixhaven.
Uh, and it was, I think it was a good attempt, but basically, Wizards of the Coast, earlier last week, I believe it was, had decided, or no, it was actually earlier this week, I think it might have been yesterday, had decided that the idea of subclass wizards or subclass spellcasters that would mix over to other classes. They'd be druids or clerics or wizards. They could be any one of those. Just didn't work. And I really had doubts about it myself. When I was reading over the Unearthed Arcana things, I thought, you know, the problem is if everybody mixed their subclasses at the exact same level, like at third level you get this, at sixth level you get this, you know, and if it was like that for all those classes, that would work. But considering druid is like second level and wizards are second level and sorcerers are first level and sixth level, and it it just doesn't work quite as well for fifth edition.
Right. I don't know. Like it's for me it's one of those things I would probably have to like go back into the Unearthed Arcana archives and like pull that stuff out and actually look at it and see what the intent was.
Hmm.
I mean I get like kind of where they're coming from, how cuz like in the article that you linked me it was really talking about, you know, Jeremy Crawford was talking about how like Yeah, they didn't want their peanut butter mixed in with their chocolate, and
Right.
and that's
Right.
that's perfectly fine. I have no problem with like letting a wizard be a wizard, letting a
Right.
bard be a bard, letting a sorcerer be a sorcerer, a warlock be a warlock. I personally feel that like as soon as you start crossing the streams a little too much, then
Mhm.
yes, it does kind of get diluted, and the thing about the class that makes the class special then just kind of goes away.
Right. I think the
Now,
idea, yeah, I think the idea was if you, it's like in Strixhaven, you would have in the same classroom, you would have a druid and a wizard sitting together in the same classroom or trying to get the same major so that when they both graduated with the same major, they would have their wizard stuff and their druid stuff, but then their subclass stuff of the school would be the similar. And I think that's kind of the idea. And I know the way it seemed from Jeremy Crawford was because he said a they had plans for in case this didn't work. I think they
yeah.
were already realizing it might not work out in testing, and apparently it didn't.
And I
Um,
mean, it's technically one of the reasons why Unearthed Arcana exists in the first
sure,
place. Because,
sure,
like, I have a very large binder down here of archives of. Because they've been doing Unearthed Arcana since pretty much the beginning and
yeah,
have tested out just so much stuff. Because really, Unearthed Arcana is where they throw the spaghetti at the wall
mhm,
and then they release it out into the wild to let the players play test it. And
yeah,
then the cool thing about Unearthed Arcana is that not only can you play test it each month when they release, or like 2 months or however, whenever they release a new Unearthed Arcana, they give you a survey asking
mhm,
about the previous one. So they really do listen to player feedback when it
yeah.
comes to all of this stuff. It's one of the reasons why psionics took like
And yeah, and
forever.
even then, it's not the psionics of the first edition.
Mm-mm.
It is much different, which is so much better. It is so much better than it could have been. And you're right. And kudos to Watsy for listening and realizing when something works, great. Let's balloon it out. Let's put it in a hardcover. If it doesn't work, let's scrap it and find something that does. And I think so. What I think is if you're listening and you were reading the Unearthed Arcana and you had a favorite, I think these subclasses will stay in. However, I think they will be specific to an actual class
Yeah,
rather than
it's
being any class can take them.
yeah, either that or maybe changing it to where it's not so much a, because I could almost see it working more in a sense of like at least the way you were describing, like I would actually do it more as like a in addition to thing. Like it's a unique thing that's part of the Strixhaven setting.
Yeah.
That's just like, an expansion to your spell list, or
Right.
and basically like kind of more like Tasha's, where because Tasha's has all of the optional features that if you're in Strixhaven and you pick your major or
Mhm.
whatever, like that gives you some additional benefits, like maybe like a background feature type of thing,
Right.
less than being a thing that's attached like to your class per se. But
Right. Or a feat that just simply says you must be a spellcaster. I think
mm-hmm.
some of these, if there's favorites, and I know I'm sure that when the survey went out, there were a lot of people who said, well, I really liked this. It just I couldn't, it didn't work from the
Yeah.
class. So I think there's going to be some favorites that WotC will say again, either, well, this subclass actually just works only for druids. So we'll just keep that as a druid subclass. We'll make a new
Yeah.
subclass for Strixhaven. And then if there's those that kind of seem to work for all the spellcasters but didn't work as a subclass, they'll say, take it as a feat. Just you have to be able to cast one spell. There's plenty of feats out there that
Oh
say
yeah.
you
Oh
have
yeah.
to cast one
Have
spell or
have
something
to
like that.
be.
So
Yeah. No,
yeah,
there's yeah, it's one of those things, like I think again, like I can't speak to it too much just because I don't like to speak on things that I don't necessarily know a whole lot about.
right.
So I might have to go back and like dig out that Unearthed Arcana and then kind of do some comparison once the book comes out, just to see
Yeah.
how if and how it eventually got included. So
Yeah, and so I think it's going to be, but it's the first. I'm still, even though they mentioned this, it's my first Magic the Gathering crossover that I'm kind of excited about. I don't know why. I've read as much as I can on it. You know, they've only kind of put out blurbs, they put out press releases, but for some reason, I'm more excited about this than I was about Ravnica or Theros. I wasn't. I thought it was cool, but Strixhaven for some reason I'm really excited about. It. I don't know why. So
I
I'll
feel
read the book
like
and.
I feel like this is the first one that has a gimmick. Do you kind of see what I'm saying
Mhm.
here? Because like Ravnica, yes, it was a setting, but if you were to like ask me like what's Ravnica's like gimmick, like what
Right.
makes Ravnica special, I really couldn't tell you because I don't like. And again, and partially it's probably partially because I'm not a magic person. I don't
Right.
click with the game, like it's not my thing. Like if it's your thing, cool, fine,
Yeah.
awesome, great.
Oh, yeah.
I'm too broke to get into magic. And then like the Mythic Odysseys of Theros, like, because that's a magic setting, right?
It is, and it's just basically
Okay.
Greek
See,
myths.
I didn't realize that that was a magic setting. I
Mhm.
thought it was just I thought again it was just because there technically is like in D&D lore, one of the planes of the multiverse is Mount Olympus. So I was just
Right.
like, oh, okay, we're just expanding on that a little bit. And so that one, I feel like that had more potential from
Mhm.
and not even that it had a gimmick, just that it had something that was really, really relatable. Because
Yeah.
lots of people love the Greek myth, like
Yeah.
irregardless if you're a magic person or not. Like I love the concept of the Mythic Odysseys of Theros,
Sure.
just because it's taking Greek myth and like giving you a chance to, okay, what if the worlds of the Greek myth were their own like thing and you could
Right.
interact with them in this game. Like I like that. I think that's really cool. Again, I didn't even know that it was a magic setting until you told me.
Yeah.
So Ravnica, or not Ravnica, Strixhaven, it has a gimmick. It has a
Yeah.
very clear thesis in terms of this is a book about going to a magic school and
Mhm.
what does that entail. And at least for my generation, I grew up on Harry Potter, and so
Exactly.
like between Harry Potter and then like the Harry Potter ish clones,
Mhm.
because there were a couple, I can't think of them off the top of my head right now, but there were like some magic school clones that arose out of that era of it's the same phenomenon as the Twilight phenomenon, where you
Sure.
had a romance with just about every mythical creature, and then there was a weird yeah,
Yeah.
magicians. So yeah,
Yeah.
so
No,
yeah,
yeah, yeah.
yeah.
Magicians is very. That's actually that I always thought was like Harry Potter for grown-ups. You're right, Ginger Halfling. The first time, and I still love magicians because it's Harry Potter for grown-ups. But yeah.
Yeah, so
So
it's so it's that
it's going to be
it's that
good.
gimmick that like really resonates with my generation and with anybody who has been, a fan of the concept of the magic school. So,
Sure.
I mean, speaking to the fact that there's been, I've known lots of people who have successfully run kind of magic school campaigns
Yeah.
where they take
Yeah. So am I.
they take the D&D setting and then they let you play, whether it's just straight up Hogwarts or
Mhm.
they set it in their own unique magic school, which that's just ripe for
Yeah.
fun plot lines. So
Yeah, the Katie, you remember Katie? She did a whole game on Harry Potter and Hogwarts in 5e. So yeah, it's a lot of fun, and I think that's gonna. So it's gonna be a good book. I'm glad again that
yeah,
Watsy is listening to people and going, this works, this doesn't work, and is going to create a good. And Watsy's done that since 2014. I mean, what did they have? They had fifth edition out in playtest for like what 2 years before they finally
something
launched
because they were
20.
calling it like originally it was called D&D Next.
Yeah,
And like I mean, there's actually some people in the Oklahoma community who could tell you far better than I could. People who actually like play tested
oh
5e.
wow,
The late great Robert Alanas was like
oh
our main, like he was our
yeah.
main guy and like the main contact with WotC, but he had a whole handful of people who got to literally play test fifth edition and really like Like they pushed it to its limits. Chris Vaughn, uh, good good buddy of mine, a friend, a good friend. Uh, there's jokes that there's rules that exist specifically because of him. we
Love it.
we joke all the time, like specifically there's rules that exist because of him and the shenanigans that he would pull during playtesting. But yeah, so it's just one of those things that, like, again, I don't think we're gonna see fifth edition go away anytime soon. I think it's just gonna get, it's gonna get bigger and better until it finally bursts, and then we'll be the old fogies who are like, back in my day, why don't we
Yes.
play some of that there fifth edition D&D? I don't want your new sixth edition. You mean I gotta learn these rules all over again? No.
Yeah. And we might, I'm the I think of the Dungeon Master Dojo guys who they played second edition, and then third edition came out. They tried it, and they went back to second edition. 3.5 came out. They tried it, went back to second edition. Fourth edition came out. They tried it, went back to second edition. They did not start catching up until fifth edition came out. When finally, this is the game I can play.
Yeah, and I mean, it's definitely one of those things that, like, and it's something that, like, I've had friends encourage me to do, and I would encourage all of our viewers and listeners to do, is, if for some reason you find yourself hitting a brick wall with, like, fifth edition, instead of, like, trying to shoehorn everything into 5e, go expand out. There's so many other systems out there. I was thinking about one. I believe it's I don't think it's Zweihander. There's another system. I'm trying to think of it because I had a buddy who really liked it, and the whole thing about that system was that there wasn't classes, and instead of classes, you just picked new abilities every time you leveled up. So you got to create these really highly customized characters because he just got tired of the class system with 5e, and that's, for some people that's the beauty of 5e, is it has these very set classes. Your peanut butter does not mix with your chocolate, but that's what he wanted to do. So instead of trying to shoehorn that into his 5e, he just went and found another system that did what he needed it to do. So
yeah.
So
there's
yes,
plenty
I would encourage
there's a lot of stuff, especially check out if you guys ever get bored, check out Kickstarter. There are plenty of new gaming systems that are out there.
I'm still salivating over Coyote and Crow. I can't wait.
It's so much fun. Or there's, like I said, there's plenty of fifth edition stuff out there. Or go back to Pathfinder 2.0. I mean, it's apparently doing very well, and a lot of people are really enjoying it. And so there are a lot of things out there. That's why I don't think D&D fifth edition has to change. My only problem with the class system is there's not enough. I want more classes. I want, gosh, 13 is not enough. I need more.
I don't know, that maybe we should put that in our notes for a future discussion, Michael. Like, if you and I were to sit down and design some straight up classes, like what would we design? That's
there we go.
That's a good topic.
That's a good topic.
Someone write that down.
Yes. Someone take notes. Okay.
So we have been ranting for like way too long.
30 minutes. Well, we knew we would, because there's when there's news, you got to let the news. You got to have the dessert first. So and that was very, very tasty dessert. I'm very, very excited.
Like I said, so much DM candy.
I know. Oh, it's gonna be beautiful. Do you think we will see kind of some crossovers with if some dragon stuff comes into Red Dirt D&D? We haven't got dragons, but
yeah, I don't know. It depends. It kind of depends on where we are in the Red Dirt story. But
and what they put out in the book.
Yeah, I mean, I built very much Red Dirt D&D with a I don't know, for some reason, like, for me, dragons are special and should be very, very special. I don't know what it is. There's just something about them. Like, I feel like in most D&D settings, you throw a rock and you hit a dragon.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And
yeah. Faerun is like that.
Yeah, like you throw a rock and you hit a dragon. but in Red Dirt, there's a limited amount, which we just found out over in our last recording session. Hi, if you didn't know, I'm gay and I can't do math. I I miscounted, and I'm like, oh yeah, there's 9. No, no,
Yeah.
Ash, there's 11.
There's 11 of
There's
them.
11. So yeah, hi. There may be some Red Dirt retcons coming in the future. But for now I don't foresee adding a whole bunch of stuff from the new
Mm-mm.
Dragon Guide, but I'm putting an asterisk next to that stating, nothing is true until it happens in the podcast.
Right.
As
Right.
all good, as all good creators should be, nothing is true until it happens in front of
Right.
the audience. Um, so I don't know. We'll have to see when it comes out this fall. And again, if we're at the end of at least the first campaign for Red Dirt, then I probably won't change the status quo too much. But hey, campaign 2, man.
Hmm.
Who knows what's gonna happen?
That's right. So Raven, the Mighty Nine, yeah, and those other
And
guys,
those others.
and those other guys.
Don't worry about it.
We were just pretty much started on chapter, I believe it's 4, with horror adventures and how to prepare your players for horror. And of course, the biggest thing is, again, just like Tasha's, really pushing the need for a zero session. Talk to us about why a zero session, Ash, is so important.
Zero sessions are important for there's 3 main reasons: group cohesion, because it gives you the DM and the players a chance to really come together as a group for the first time and kind of figure everything out as far as your cohesion, your dynamic. It gives you a chance to set expectations. So your players can ask questions of you as the DM, you as the DM can ask questions of your players, and you can I got real quiet all of a sudden. What's I haven't changed anything. I was just using my more my sexy voice.
I don't know.
um but yeah, so group cohesion brings you and your players together.
Yeah.
Allows you to set expectations, set boundaries, allows you to really talk through like what your goals for the campaign are and what the players' goals for the campaign are and what the characters' goals for the campaign are, and definitely gives you a opportunity to make characters as a group.
Yeah. Have you ever, because every time I've played, even when we got a zero session, by the time I get to the zero session, I've got a character created, usually with the DM tells us we're going to kind of run this kind of story. So these kind of races and classes are allowed. Have you ever actually made characters during a zero session? And has that worked?
I don't know. Like my whole I've never made characters at a zero session. Um with a little asterisk in there. I've never made characters for a D&D game at a zero session. In other systems I have
Right.
Shadowrun, but
Yes. In fact, I've actually sat with you at Shadowrun, and actually we sat and created it when we were doing that the one game when we were playing over at your place.
yeah, Shadowrun really, but then again, like as I've joked in the past, Shadowrun takes 3 hours just to make a character.
Yeah.
They've streamlined it for like 6e Shadowrun, but literally I've had Shadowrun campaigns where yeah we sat there for 3 hours
Yeah.
building everyone's characters, getting all their stuff, and like making connections between one another. For 5th edition, it's just character creation goes like that. And I'm the kind of person who I come in with like 2 to 3 different character ideas,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
half
That's
the
how I am
time,
too.
yeah, and like half the time I have them already like fleshed out to the point where I've got the stats, I'm ready to go. So I'm usually the person, and mostly also I DM like way too much.
Mhm.
So in order to like, get like floss my brain out a little bit, I just build characters in my spare time that
Oh yeah,
I can slot them in places. So I usually am the person who ends up helping other people make their
yeah,
characters.
yeah. And that's I just there's and you go, well, I've got this character. Oh well, that really won't work for the campaign. Oh well, then maybe one of these other 10 characters I have brought with me will
I
fit into
have
this campaign.
options. And especially with the subscription to D&D Beyond where I get
Oh,
unlimited
I
character
know.
slots, I'm just like the power.
Yeah, I've got so many characters that I just haven't. I mean, and of course
I just
also
built a new
characters.
one.
Yeah,
If
and
I'm ever in a
AL.
Rotoya campaign, I built myself a little dwarf barbarian.
Yeah, and see, well, as a DM, there's also you build characters. You go, that's a really great character. I've got an NPC. Congratulations, you know.
That's me. Like 90% of my NPCs that have stats are characters that I've just built.
Yeah.
Or like I think I joked how like there's a character that showed up very briefly in Red Dirt D&D, Mordecai. Uh Mordecai is my grave cleric actually. And I love him to itsy bitsy little bits, but like someone was just making fun of his name when I was playing him in like a Faerun campaign. They're just
Mhm.
like, Mordecai, that sounds very backwoods. And I'm like, okay, yeah, shut up.
Yeah, but it works for Red Dirt D and
And
D.
it works great for Red Dirt D&D. Um but yeah, so it's just
Yeah,
good to have stuff in your back pocket, but yeah, no, I've never, like, thinking back, I've never actually built a character at session 0. I've always had something ready to go, but
yeah.
that's just who I am. So,
I'm just wondering if that would be neat to really actually have it. You're at your table. Go, okay, no one bring a character, and let's go ahead and roll it instead of doing the any kind of standard rate. And
right.
right in front of me, let's actually roll these characters right here, right now, and everyone build this campaign
I
together.
mean, I think
I
that's, or for me, that's part of it too. Is that I've actually never rolled. I've rolled stats only for a fourth edition character. Like one of the first characters I ever played, the first time I played D&D,
mm,
was I rolled stats, but I've always been an Adventure League girl,
right.
Adventure League kid.
And that's
So
that's why I standard array is or point by is almost
I
always
always
read.
I
So
always do point by. Like I've
yeah,
never rolled. So yeah, you would have to, like, someone would have to rope me in on that experience because I've never done that. But then again, I am very particular with my build. Like, I don't know, there's something about that point buy. I'm just like, you will take point buy from my cold dead
yeah,
hands cuz it gives you the freedom
hmm
to build a character the way you want, but it also gives you a little bit of randomness as well. So it's
yeah,
that perfect little.
yeah. And it's fun because it works. You've got your brain going. And see, yeah, ginger halfling, same thing. Point by, and of course, Aiden talking about you know put in your NPCs, take your PCs and put them in as NPCs. It's
Oh, I've
that's
never
a great
done
thing
that.
about that's the great thing about fifth edition. You can you go, oh, that's a great character. No, he'll show up in my campaign. But so when you're running a horror campaign, it talks about these running these talking about lighting. I'm let me tell you, we played at Edmond Unplugged on Friday nights for a long time. Would love to eventually go back to there, but it's so dark, and I'm an old
Mike's
man.
Mike's got
I
really
can't.
good mood lighting.
Yeah, but I'm an old man. I can't see anymore. I don't have 20-year-old eyes that I can just, the darker it gets, the harder it is to see. So lighting is cool, but
I think
uh,
for me, the whole thing about like setting the atmosphere. So for me, horror games run best in the home
yes,
because, like, when you're at a game store, there's just too many variables. There's too much, like, people coming over to your table and being like, "Hey, what are you doing?"
yeah,
You've got all the background noise from all the chatter. Honestly, my favorite, like, Curse of Strahd game was a game that I was playing here at the house, And even though we played it like in full bright daylight, like whenever we play here at the house, I open up the windows and we let in a lot of natural light. And we have our lighting going on. But a buddy of mine, she came in with like her Spotify account, and she basically was our DJ.
No.
And so because she had pre-built, because she had also been part she had also run and kind of been part of a Curse of Strahd campaign. So she had all of these playlists already built out with all of this like mood music,
Hmm.
and that was enough. Like
Yeah.
between the mood music and then like I would have like I have I'm a goth at heart. So like all of our house, like all of our wine cups are from
Hmm.
like the Target Halloween section. Like I have
Yes.
don't at me. Uh but yeah, so like I would serve, we would have like bring out a bottle of wine and just, would be nice and lovely, and that was all we really needed was
Yeah.
just, just a little bit of something. But it definitely worked better in a private setting where we could really control what was going on, and it allowed us to really dive in and really get part of it.
Yeah. Music is it mentions music, and music is a great way to do it. It was I don't know if I told you, but we were my son and I were on vacation in Branson with the family, and my cousin Anne said she wanted to play Dungeons and Dragons, and I'm like, okay. And so my
Ding dong.
mother, my mother my cousin, my nephew, and my niece all came in. My son DM'd us. And my cousin then also brings in, she just pulled up one of this from Spotify, a Dungeons and Dragons, and played it. And so we had this music playing. It was just a wonderful experience. It was a great game. And the fact that we had four people at the table who had never played before, and people who used to make fun of me when I was a kid playing it, yeah, it was phenomenal. So,
Vindication.
yes.
Yeah. Yeah. No. Like there's um set like a lot of the atmosphere tips that they had, I would say like work a lot better for home games. If
Yeah.
you're playing in public, you can do some things to mitigate like, distractions, or, you know, you really can't change the lighting situation too much
No.
based off of where you're at. I mean, I've heard of like some great gaming stores that have like private VIP rooms,
Right.
but those are few and far between. So yeah, it's so really my whole thing when I'm setting atmosphere for games and for horror games, it's all in the vocal performance
Right.
as a DM. It's all in your physicality as a DM. And this is probably something that, I can obviously talk for hours and hours and hours on, and I do talk for hours on it when I run my DM classes, is that you do have to really have a certain physicality whenever you're really in your DM mode based on your campaign. I mean, you've probably noticed it, Michael, that like whenever I'm voicing NPCs in
Hmm.
Red Dirt, my
Yeah.
whole physicality will change.
Yeah.
Like, you know, I was doing Paw Snaggletooth. I gotta get that jaw out, and you're just looking a little crazy. Yeah.
Yeah. I
But
really thought the goblins would be a bigger deal. I didn't. Yeah.
oh, they're coming. They're coming.
Oh, good. Better bring a whole bunch of them now.
Right. Find some homebrewed goblin stats, or just add do the thing that very few DMs do, but is technically an option, which is to add character levels to a monster stat block.
Hmm. Sure.
Love doing that. You mean Chinder Halfling says, you mean all my characters who have the same voice won't work for our Halloween haunted house? I mean, you gotta have a stable of voices. Like Connor jokes all the time that like all of his NPCs are just southern, but you do need to have the calm, sophisticated vampire lord who's here to welcome you Welcome to my home. Please come, sit down. And then when he gets upset, it gets a little more unhinged. Or, you have the very, very scared and worried little, oh, I hope his lordship is not displeased, and may the night pass peacefully. Or the big bombastic tavern guy, hey, come in, wipe the chill off your bones. You don't have to have a lot of voices as the DM. You just have to have
Right.
the vocal range.
Yes.
And you just got to play with the effect. You got to play with, and as you see, there was a lot of physicality with just those three different. Because that's the thing about voice acting, is that not a lot of people don't realize is that even within voice acting, there is a lot of physicality that the more you put into it, the more you're going to get out of it in
Right.
terms of your vocal performance. So, which is why sometimes I think we should just like record a we need to like put a camera on me at some point when we record Red Dirt D&D, just so you all can see the different changes that go on.
Yeah.
um
Yeah, and it is not, you don't necessarily have to have accents. You don't necessarily have to, just simply changing the way a person speaks. And sometimes the best thing to do is listen to other people speaking, and either whether you do out in public or even watching movies and television shows and seeing how the actors portray those, and you can put those into your characters, and that is enough at least to bring in every player. The more you do that to your NPCs, the more fun it's going to be. I remember playing a set on Saturday nights groups. They ran into a guy, and I really thought I was going to try and do like a Middle Eastern accent. Can't do a Middle Eastern accent. I tried, and it came out really horrible. So
yeah, sometimes it's best. Sometimes it's best not just to not do it at all, and to just come out stronger
right.
with
So that's
the
yeah,
character
that's
traits.
yeah. He was a merchant. He was basically almost Middle Eastern, or he's merchant, but he just didn't have the accent. So I
Mm-hmm.
just kind of had that. Oh, come in, come in. Oh yes. Oh, it's so good to see you. Oh, you've been so long a time. Come on in. And it's that kind of attitude that it's going to draw your players in,
Yeah,
and
and
that it's going to
especially
make them invest.
yeah, again, especially when you're trying to get them when you're trying to immerse them in a world and get them invested in the world, then you do need to, even if you don't have to do the funny voices. We're not telling you to do that. It's again more to just embody whatever you're doing.
Mhm.
One of the things I wrote in my notes for this chapter is the devil is in the details, especially in horror.
Mhm.
Because you know you have to lovingly describe the dilapidated haunted house.
Mhm.
And even just pulling it in and just getting a more serious tone, and describing how you're looking in this mirror, and the more you stare into the mirror, the more your reflection starts to change, and you can see the little crow's feet starting to wrinkle at the edge of your eyes, and the creases around the mouth begin to deepen as the skin begins to tighten and turn, stretch across the bones of your face as you age right before your eyes. You have to it's a you have to give things loving descriptions,
Right.
and and again, paying attention very much to those little details, and that's what's gonna hook.
Mhm.
That's what's gonna get, and especially when you bring your vocal cadence down, and you go from crazy back and forth, high energy da 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 da, to just this very gentle, some people might call it like the audiobook voice,
Mhm.
where I'm describing this very serious thing to you, so my cadence has transformed. But then we get into battle, and it's got to be go 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 go. The arrows are flying, the spells are flinging. It's just go 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 go. So there's a lot. there's a lot more in your performance as a DM and in the way you modulate, just the tone of your voice and the speed of your voice, even if you're not doing the funny voices and the sound effects and all of that. Like there's something to be said even for just simple tricks
Yeah,
to.
putting 100% into it is the key. And I used to do theater, and I used to do some directing, and sometimes we would direct some of the younger people, and you always had that one kid who's like, not going to do it. I'm not going to do it. I'm just going to look stupid. And when I would grab them together and I said, look, and I say to him, look, if you don't do it, you are going to look stupid because everyone else is giving 100%. So if you just give 100%, whether you've got the voices, whether if you really just dig into what you're doing, find your personalities for these characters, your players are going to love it. They will truly, they're not there to judge your performance. They are there to accept your performance. And if you give 100% to your performance, whether it's, you don't have to be, an incredible actor, you don't have to be this major extrovert, you just simply have to put 100% into it, and your players will appreciate it and love it, and they'll be talking about it for years.
Oh yeah, and it's one of those things that like the more, fortunately, a lot of the times the more you put into it as your DM, if you've got good players, they're going to rise to meet you.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yes, yeah.
you feeding into it and believing in it and giving into it will cause your players to be that much more invested. And when the players are, you got invested players, invested DM, you got a great game there, guys. Like, that's a great game. It's just you have to believe in and be invested with whatever you're doing, regardless of where you're doing it. And oh no, the lighting is terrible and there's so much background noise because we're in a convention hall and everything's, going on crazy around us. So, um, the other thing I kind of also wanted to pull attention to, and a very important skill that you need to figure out, the faster you figure it out, the better you're going to be, pacing and timing.
Mm-hmm.
Good lord, I have sat with some DMs who just don't get the concept.
Yeah,
There's no
yeah, so have I.
urgency when there needs to be urgency. There's no lulls where there need to be lulls. And that's how I tell a good adventure from a bad adventure, is the pacing of the adventure.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if the pacing makes sense and there's real good, hills and valleys in that adventure, then yeah, I've got a great adventure on my hands. I can work with this. I have changed the
Yeah,
pacing of some adventures because I'm like, nope, this not working. Gotta
yeah.
fix this.
Yeah, the biggest way to do that is to know your audience. Look, and your audience is your players. So look at your players. The best advice I give to DMs is look at them. Are they listening to you? Are they watching what you're doing? Are they picking up their phones and texting their boyfriends and girlfriends? You've lost them. Do something, because I've been at tables where the DM is just talking and talking and talking, and everyone at the table is.
Mm-hmm.
And then when he says, "Okay, what are you guys doing?" We're like, we weren't listening. I have no idea. Just look up at your players. Don't just read the text. Look up at your players. If they are not paying attention, of course, and the worst thing is the past year, COVID has all been
COVID.
online. Because when you play in person, you can do that. When you're playing online, it's not as easy to do that. It's not as easy to read your players,
I've
mainly because most of our players didn't have the cameras on anyway.
Yeah,
So,
but say I've come to the conclusion, definitely come to the conclusion that if I continue to do D&D online, I am probably going to require cameras just
mm,
cuz like I need to see your face. I need to see what's going on. Cuz it definitely has kind of gotten to a point where I can play over voice only, but you do
yeah.
lose something because there's visual cues that you miss out on.
Mm,
It's easy for somebody to hide the fact that they're uncomfortable if you can't see their face, if you
right.
can't see their body language. um heck, I've done it myself where there's been some games that I was playing in with some people who were making me uncomfortable, and just because I wanted to get through the experience, I just got quiet, just
Yeah.
stopped engaging altogether. And
Yeah.
of course, my DM unfortunately didn't pick up on that and didn't check in with me, which basically caused me to stop playing certain games just because, like, oh, those guys are gonna be there. No, thank
Yeah.
you. Um, so yeah, but and of course, Aiden mentions so many DMs I've had that don't play to their player's pace.
Right.
Yes, you are going to
Right. Right.
get, well, so it's a fine line between playing to your player's pace and then really, because unfortunately there are times where players want to drag out something that doesn't need to be drug out.
Mhm.
Like, if your DM is like trying to get you, if your DM is trying to get you to move on and you're not picking up the hint, like, that is so frustrating from the DM's point of view. Like,
But then
you know,
drop a fireball on
yeah, yeah, drop a fireball. Yeah.
them.
I mean, I know it's like the joke, right? How, players like asking the same question of an NPC they're interrogating over and over again because they're not getting the answer they want.
Mhm.
And it's like, what do you want me to do, guys? This is the answer that he has for you. Like, I mean, you're not like, the conversation that you're having is unproductive. It's not going anywhere, but the players still insist on having it anyways.
Yeah.
Or the whole like, I walk into a room, what do I see? Nothing. What do you mean nothing? Can I want to do a perception check. Is there anything hidden? You okay, give me a perception check. 18. You see nothing. Well, I'm still gonna tear apart the room anyways. Okay, you get nothing. And it's like, and it's stuff like that that will also drag down the pacing because
Uh-huh.
they're not picking up what you're putting down. It's like, yes, there are some times that there are uninteresting rooms in an adventure,
Mhm.
or because you're exploring a mansion or a castle, and yes, sometimes you do run into the broom closet, and yes, sometimes the broom is animated and is going to kill you, but most of the time it's just a broom closet, guys. There's
Yeah.
no need to. There's no need. Stop.
Yeah.
Why?
Yeah. So players be really aware when your DM's kind of like, just move on, guys. It's better that way. Um, before we end, actually, because we're really close to this, one of the things that it talks about is ending on a cliffhanger. And again, I think this goes with the pacing. So I want to mention this. Ending on a cliffhanger is huge. And if you listen to Red Dirt D&D, you hear that Ash works hard on making sure they end every one of their games. Not always. Sometimes it's on a high note. Sometimes, sometimes it's okay. You finally get a chance to rest, and it's like, but ending on a cliffhanger is huge because it brings your audience back, and your audience, remember, is always the people at your table. You want them to come back going, okay, now we got all these half orcs just coming right at us. What do we do? Okay, well, we'll find out next week. What? That's fantastic. That's the way to do it. That ending on a cliffhanger is huge. And it's, watch any horror movie or not a horror movie because they usually don't have, well, they do. When they'll watch a horror movie, there's always that, okay, they killed the bad guy. But then there's that epilogue where the bad guy comes back
The
or
post
it,
credit scene.
yeah, then they these it focuses on their leg and all of a sudden it twitches or something like that, and that's what you want. You want to get that, and so to bring back your characters, your players excited to return. And there's nothing greater than when Ash says, um, they come right at you or whatever, and that's where we're gonna end. And but it draws in us as players, it draws in our audience. So
I love
try
it
to
when I
find
get to
those.
hear their the Red Dirt cast, when I hear their screams of just,
Yes.
what do you mean that's it? Like, yep,
Yeah.
that just happened.
Yeah. So DMs, even if you have a 4 hour game going and it's only 3.5 hours in, but it's something that's just right there, go ahead and end it. It's okay. Uh, your player's not going to be mad because they know you've just ended on a really high note, and so don't worry about that. Sometimes try to plan your cliffhanger to come at just the right time. Maybe if it's going too fast, maybe pull them back. Work on something that's going to draw them into something that's going to lead to that cliffhanger by the end of it.
Throw a chew toy in front of them and let them gnaw
Yeah.
on it for a little bit. I wouldn't even necessarily say. So my whole thing is that sometimes you can abuse the cliffhanger a little too much,
Yes. Don't. Oh, yeah.
which is
Never do that all the
why,
time.
yeah, which is why, like with Red Dirt, I don't. Um, Actually, 90% of my cliffhangers I don't even plan. It just kind of,
Right.
it just peaks and hills, as we talked about earlier. The hills and the valleys. Like you have to find those moments of, because we'll have so much intense action, and then I let it taper off. Because, and that is also something they talk about in this chapter too, with pacing and tension, is that you do have to have that high tension release. High
Right.
tension release. You can't keep it up here all the time, because then people just get exhausted. You
Right.
have to
And
give. You have to
yeah, and
give
Blaze Hayden was
yourself.
talking about how ending on a cliffhanger is something that shouldn't just apply to horror games; it should apply to all games. And of course, you're absolutely right. Not only that, I think this entire book, not entire book, like 70-80% of this book should be applicable to every game,
Oh yeah, you strip off.
not just horror.
Yeah, you
And
strip away the horror trappings from this book.
yeah,
Like you just ignore the fact that it's talking about horror, and a good 90% of this applies to
it,
everything.
it is Dungeon Masters. It is a Dungeon Masters tome, and it is that's why I love it so much. And you're right. You don't always end on cliffhangers. One of my favorite endings in Red Dirt D&D was at the McKee Ranch. We're all sitting around playing poker,
Mm-hmm.
and it was not a cliffhanger ending, but there was something peaceful that we'd all finally come together. It was, and up until recently, one of the best moments of our characters. And so, and it will, and it sticks with me, and that's a great ending. So
It
yeah,
doesn't
fine,
have
just
to. Yeah, it doesn't have to necessarily. It doesn't have to necessarily be a cliffhanger. It just has to be some sort of. I'm going to use the word stinger. I don't think it's necessarily the right word, but it's just something. If it's that, if you can see the moment in your mind as like the end point,
mm,
then yes, like that's a good place to put a bookmark in it, because yeah, you just have to kind of figure out, is this a moment that lets my players want to come back?
mm,
And it doesn't necessarily have to be a cliffhanger, like what you're talking about with the McKee Ranch. Like that basically was just a moment of, we're pausing here. We know there's more story to tell,
yeah,
but this is our pause. This is our breather. We just came out of a pretty intense, 2, 3 sessions where it was just go, 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 go. Now we need a pause. Now
mm,
we need a breather. It was, all social encounter. It was all role play work, but it was still a great moment because it served the story, and it was what was needed in that moment. And then we come back and, it's the anarchy arc.
yeah, yeah, and we were never happy again.
I'm never happy again.
uh, but yeah, so we didn't get anywhere on this book.
Nope.
But we have a great. I mean, that's what I want. I wanted with this discussion was for us to basically, hopefully, people are taking away from this how to be a better DM, how to take this book and make themselves a better DM. So hopefully, we'll go further into it next week.
We'll find out. I mean, unless Wizards of the Coast drops like another big announcement that we have to talk about for 30 minutes. I mean, hey, we might finish. I don't know. Who knows?
Yeah, yeah.
But yeah, if there's a topic that you guys see, or you guys want us to kind of discuss or talk about, feel free to hit us up. The email is right on screen down there, reddirtdnd@gmail.com. Drop us a line, tell us what you think. We take all forms of constructive criticism and
Mm-hmm.
critique. So,
We love to hear them.
mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's how we know how we're doing.
But yes, thank you all so much for joining us this evening. Um, yeah, and there's always next week. There's always
That's
next week,
right.
Aiden. This is very true. Wiser words have never been spoken. So we're gonna put a pin in this discussion. We'll come back. We'll come back next week and finish out chapter 4, and then
Mm-hmm.
we'll see about talking about some things from chapter 5. But then it's a whole world open.
Yeah.
At least until we get some new releases that we can talk about.
We might go back to Tasha's. Maybe we should go back to Tasha's
You
and
know,
talk about
that's
Tasha stuff.
honestly, I like that thought mostly because I've perused through Tasha's,
Mhm.
but unfortunately, it was one of the books that came out during COVID, so I really haven't had a chance to actually dive into Tasha's because
Yeah.
I haven't had a need to.
I got all the way up to the DM stuff. I was glued to the PC stuff.
I just
But
looked at the pretty pictures.
yeah, some of the best artwork of Wizards of the Coast. Oh,
The
and love the some of the very very freeing, sexually freeing art that was done.
the wizardly boyfriends relaxing together in
Yeah.
magic school. There was a time I actually thought about making that my desktop background for a while, just because
Yes.
it's so cute.
It is. It
It's
is.
so
And it's so
cute.
wonderful that Wizards of the Coast now feels like they can be comfortable with putting that out there and
But say
not feel
one of
like,
the key images for Strixhaven, actually, so it's like a masquerade ball, and yeah, um, they have a gay couple, like two boys at the very forefront, and then there's two girls off to one side, and then a guy and a girl off to the other side. So it's like
yeah,
ah,
yeah.
ah.
It's wonderful.
There's an elf with vitiligo in Tasha's, the condition where you lose pigment in the skin,
Mhm.
which I love. Like I love the way it was done. It's really cute. So there's a lot of good, like I mean, we could sit here and talk about that for 5 hours
I
straight.
know.
Go get me a copy of Art and Arcana, and then we'll really be in business.
Yeah, yeah. I
But
have it. I have a copy of that, which is a great book. Yeah. Got it for Christmas, I think. I think my wife got that for Christmas. Yeah.
well, I think that's gonna do it for us for this episode of A&M Talk D&D. Thank you again once more to everybody in the chat who joined us tonight. It was lovely to have you all here.
Mhm.
As always, I am Ash King.
I'm Michael Cross.
And until next time, um, find the hottest elf you can and give them as many kisses as they want.